Hello, everybody. My name is Benny, and welcome to The Fool's Apprentice. Oh my God, today I'm really excited. I have four people that were on my tarot chat series, and we're going to have a group tarot chat discussing various topics. Hi, everybody. How are y'all doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Do
Hello.
you mind introducing yourselves, please?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, like we did the testing.
Perfect. So my name is Dani of Dani Mystic. I've been a tarot reader for quite a few years now. I have a YouTube channel. I do readings and stuff on DaniMystic.com, and I'm also the creator of Mystic Masters Tarot and Pear Tree Court Oracle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nick Jacobs of Page of Cups Tarot. That's my handle on Instagram. A lot of people know me in the San Francisco Bay Area as a tarot reader. I've been reading tarot for over 20 years, since I was like 12 years old. And I'm the creator of the Haptic Tarot, which unfortunately is currently sold out. But on January 29th of this year, you'll see a new deck I've created. It's called Departures Tarot, and it's all. I won't get into the nuances of it, but it comes out a little later this year. So hi.
I'm Tara. I'm on YouTube as Cozy Core and on Instagram as Tara is Cozy. And my YouTube channel is pretty much exclusively tarot content. I do talk about books quite a bit. I read a lot. And I try to sprinkle in like wellness and spirituality and all that kind of stuff too. But that's it for me.
And I'm Lisa from Mythical Witchery, and that you'll find me on Instagram as Mythical Witchery as well as my YouTube. And I've been reading tarot off and on, more off than on until the last few years, since I was about 16, 17. I'm 56 now, so it's been a long time. But I feel like I'm anywhere near an expert on it, like nowhere near. I feel like I'm sitting in the presence of people who know so much more than me. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, yeah, no way.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It feels like no matter how long you study, the more you study, there seems to be much more that you realize you still have to learn.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the same for everybody?
Oh, yeah. I would never fix my face to say I'm an expert at tarot. No way. No matter. I don't care if I've been doing it for 100 years. Like, there's always more to learn. No way.
What do you think there are experts in? What would that look like for y'all?
For me, I don't know if anyone, I mean, there are certain aspects of it that I feel like you can be an expert in, the history, the artwork, this, that, and the other. But as far as for reading tarot and just it's so personal that I feel like everyone is their own sort of expert in the way that they personally read, but a overall expert, I just don't feel like you can be that in a way because so many people read in so many different ways. I mean, culturally, spiritually, some people read only by the book and only, this way, that way. So it's like someone can't be an expert in the way that I read energy and the way that I read the tarot because they're not feeling the same things that I feel. They don't go through the things that I feel. So, it's, I feel like in that way, no one can truly be an expert because it's so personal.
Okay. Actually, I think that's a really good definition or explanation of it. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was saying I think there can be like I think I agree with Dani. Like I think like obviously it was created with like a specific intention initially. So if you want to be like a traditionalist, like I think that there's that aspect of expertise. But I totally agree that like obviously it was a creation of someone and we can adapt that creation and create our own way of using it. So I'm glad that there's people that I would consider experts because I feel like sometimes I want the stability or the foundational knowledge that I can trust. But I don't think that that means that they are lording over it or anything like that, and that I can't go outside of what they're saying. So yeah, I think I just echoed what you said, Dani.
What about people like Benuel Wynn and Rachel Pollack? Would they be considered experts for y'all?
Yes.
They would be like, I consider them to be incredibly knowledgeable, especially when it comes to the history and the symbology and things like that. I've read a bit of both of them, and I feel like their knowledge is absolutely key in so many different ways. So I feel like in certain aspects, they are a go-to, they are a knowledgeable source.
Okay. Nick, you said that your haptic tarot's out of print. Are you going to be reprinting that?
I can't reveal anything now, but contractually, I am not allowed to reprint it. So that's all. That's all I can say for the moment. But yes, I'm focused on the next deck. Yeah.
And how long
Someone already outed me on YouTube. Somebody kind of already outed me because we were having a private conversation about it, and I guess I didn't say it was a private conversation. But it is not the end of the deck.
Okay, and
which is nice.
How long did it take to sell out from the time that you started shipping them out?
That is a good question. Kickstarter was about 250 and I only printed 500. And so I would say the last ones kind of went in and out around, what month are we in? We're in January. I would say August or September of last year. And then it kind of just, and I, of course, like have a few decks that I keep for my just personal archives. Yeah, they're all gone. Bye. Sorry.
Very exciting. You must have been very excited when it took off the way it did.
I was, and then I kind of do these just cursory searches of like, because Lisa, I know that you were kind enough to chat about my deck, so thank you. I really appreciated the video and the conversation around artificial intelligence. I think it was a very thoughtful video, so thank you for making that. And then when it comes to kind of a weird clout, Dani, I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you start finding reproductions of it like out there in the wild, like it's a weird feeling because it's like you're stealing my art or you're stealing this and you're making something else, which is, I'm like, okay, but I found it on a Russian website, and it was being produced, and I can't track the source exactly, but I kind of like I was like, that's bad, but kind of, I don't know, it was a weird mixed feeling.
Yeah, definitely.
And Dani, what was your experience when did you do Kickstarter? You didn't do Kickstarter.
I did not. I did this completely myself because I didn't want to go that route. Again, like number one, I'm a procrastinator. And number two, I did this for me, if I'm being honest. Mystic Masters was just a full labor of love. It took me about 2 years to do.
Wow.
From start to finish, because I hunted down all the 15th and 16th, probably 15, 16, and 1700s, but closer to the older stuff. I hunted down these pictures. I altered them myself. I printed them out on watercolor paper. I watercolored them. I added to them. Then I scanned them all in. And then I created them, and then I did make playing cards. I did do them myself for a while, and then I put them up on make playing cards. That way they would be available for anyone and everyone. But I funded it all myself, and I did it all myself. So for me, I didn't go the Kickstarter route because I just felt like I wasn't at that level. You know what I mean? I don't have the kind of organization skills that go along with all of that. And honestly, I'm definitely a self-doubter. So I'm just like, well, if people want it, they'll go find it, kind of idea. So this was more just like a labor of love for me that I wanted to see a deck like this out in the world. So I didn't expect I don't even know, like the
response,
the love around it, the response around it. And so I probably sold, I think I did about the same thing, about 500 myself. And then they still come like trickling in every once in a while. I'll notice when someone talks about it because I'll get a couple of new orders that'll come in. But yeah, I did mine kind of on the DL.
Very nice. Now, Nick, you mentioned AI. So AI is still a very big topic within the tarot community. And I've noticed with some people who are very against AI, but there seems to be a bit of a shift going on the longer we tend to have AI decks. I don't think they're ever going to go away. I think they're here to stay. Has anybody's, perspective changed? Like Nick, for you, before you did your deck, did you have a real strong opinion about AI? And did it change because you wanted to create the deck?
I think it was because what I kind of like Dani had said, like there was a deck that I had in my head that I knew that I couldn't myself physically make because I am not a 14th, 15th century Renaissance painter patron kind of thing, like or any of that. So the deck that I had in my head, I think the closest I've ever gotten like has been like, I mean, I have the reproductions of like the Visconti Sforza and the Carrie Yale decks, and they're beautiful. And I mentioned this somewhere with another interview that to me those are more artifacts than they are usable decks. They can be used, but to me they're such a piece of like our history as readers that they're almost kind of too inaccessible. So the closest I think I found was something like Pagan Otherworlds or kind of these reproductions of these old kind of masters painterly kind of decks. And so being in the San Francisco Bay Area, so close to Silicon Valley, and kind of I've in tech briefly. It's not for me, but this conversation kind of like continues on like in the city that I live in. And so when I started tinkering with it myself, I was like, holy cow, like this is what I have in my head. And I think I've said it before, like it almost became like a very weird relationship with the artificial intelligence. It could kind of like, it knew kind of what was in my head. And I found that the less I fed it, the more I could get exactly what I wanted, like as base images, and then kind of manipulate them highly, like once they were out. But from where those images started to kind of what it can do now, I mean, that was 2 years ago. That's pretty wild. Like it's kind of, it is scary and it's intense, but I think it's, I try to look at the altruism like that still exists within it.
Okay. All right. So we'll wait a few minutes for Dani to get back on.
Poor Dani.
I know. I bet she's a little stressed out. I would be stressed out if I was the guy that kept knocking out toe. But she's really easygoing overall. Do all of you follow her? If you really do you do the tarot? Do you follow tarot channels?
I don't. I just kind of view as kind of organically, like as they kind of pop up in my YouTube feed. But yeah, I'm not an in front of camera person. I'm more of a, I think we've discussed this before. I'm more like behind the scenes and still photography. It's what I do full time as my full time job. So photos are kind of more my thing. But I love the videos.
Tara, Lisa, have you seen his Instagram?
Yes.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful?
Beautiful. Inspiring, actually. I absolutely love it. So pretty.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I got a spiral with a pin and a card. Okay. So has anybody shifted a little or a lot regarding their thoughts about AI? You have, Tara?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I still I wouldn't say like I have a strong opinion one way or the other at this point, but when it first came out, I was like, okay, I'm not going to purchase any AI stuff. But I wasn't, screaming from the rooftops that it was evil or anything like that, because I've seen this before, right? I'm sure it happened when photography came out and all the painters were like, this is, the easy way out or whatever they were saying about it. But we see now that like all these different mediums still exist. Some people love oil painting, some people love photography, some people like collage. So I think AI is just going to eventually be seen as another one. And the thing is, like, the criticisms that people have of it, I do understand. And some of them I agree with, but I also understand the appeal and the desire to take this tool and to be able to create something that exists in your mind and put it out into the world. So it's kind of like, I don't know, I feel like I have understanding and sympathy for both sides, but ultimately, like you said, like it's here and it is beautiful. And I use it in my life, like not, creating decks, but I use it for other parts of my life. And it's quite useful. And it can be inspiring too, right? Like it's sometimes you just will type in, I'm kind of trying to create this type of thing, or I have this idea, and it'll spit something out and it'll get you going. And it's, I think it's great.
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I at first I was like, oh no, this is going to be terrible. We're not going to be able to know anything. Like this is going to be like, there is a sense of fear there, I think, with anything. But like Tara was saying, sometimes with digital art, it was the same way. Like, oh, now you're going to have all these brushes that you can do all this stuff where I worked years and years to be able to learn how to do this kind of thing. And it does make art more accessible to people. And again, it's another tool. There's still a person behind it. And I think sometimes we forget that, you know what I mean? Like, especially in a lot of the debates that have been going on and people who are so gung-ho about like, no, no, no. It's like, you forget that there's someone behind that. And there is someone that is driving this force and trying to create something with help. And then, I've seen so many now that it starts with AI and then they come in and they alter and they do these kind of things. And it's like, how is that different than what I've done? I've taken 15th and 16th century art and I have altered it and I have created my own thing out of this, public domain imagery. How is that any different? And it's like, I think we forget that there are still people behind this. And I think, it's going to be here to stay. So I've definitely shifted. And I feel like everyone can have their own opinion on it. But I do think that we need to realize that there's still people behind this.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts, Lisa?
So many. Yeah, I'm a traditional artist. I do oils and watercolors and all kinds of things. I also do photography. I've worked on computers for a long, long time doing graphic art on the computer. And so I've feelings about AI. I think the thing that irritates me the most is when people present something as if it's like created by a human when it wasn't, when it was created by AI. That makes me really upset. I backed one deck, I'm not going to say what it was, that the creator insisted that it was not AI. But so I went ahead and got it. And when I got it in my hands and looked at it, there were cards that it was so obvious that it was AI. And I felt like he had deliberately tried to deceive people. Mm-hmm. And that really irritated me. Where with Nick's deck, Nick, you were completely upfront about what you were doing. You said, this is AI and this is what I'm doing and this is why. And I really respected that. And although I didn't back the Kickstarter, I ended up buying your deck after the fact. I'm so glad that I did. I love it. So AI is a tough, tough thing.
I agree with Lisa. Transparency is key in everything. Transparency is key when it comes to that.
Yeah, when Nick and we did the tarot chat, I wasn't sure where I stood. I was very apprehensive. And so I've really been listening to people and their opinions. And that's why I've noticed this shift happening. But what I think today is that I think I was more afraid of what people would think of me if I said I'm okay with AI, because I have a channel and there are a lot of subscribers and some of them are very staunch, artist driven, supportive people, which is absolutely okay. And so I was very apprehensive in saying that it doesn't bother me. And I think that's what it is. It's not that I like it any better than I like the artwork that's done or created by hand. It's just, if I like it, I like it. I think it's beautiful. Mm-hmm. And I didn't back Nick's deck either because I felt stuck. And then finally I was like, I'd watch the videos, people doing the reviews, and I said, I really like this deck. And I said, fuck it, I'm getting it. So I bought it. And, for me, I'm at a place where I'm just okay. I'm okay with it. As y'all were talking and giving examples of other decks, you had mentioned collage, and I'm thinking collages are images that other people created that they are using to create a new deck. So I'm like, yeah, I guess that's you could make that parallel comparison with an AI deck. So I think the debate's going to continue. I don't think it's over. I think it'll be several years before people get to a place where they're just, it won't be a debate any longer. Okay, so let's go to the questions. I have them on my phone. One question is, what things are a hard no when buying a deck? Now, are there things that you look at and you're like, you like the deck, something shows up and you're like, nope, not doing it?
Yes. For me, as a tactile person, as a tarot card reader, the material. I have purchased decks that I love the artwork, but I get it, and my preference is for matte, usually linen finish, something that's easily spreadable, that's very tactile. So when we start getting decks, as an example, I purchased an old Renaissance deck. I think that Lo Scarabeo, I think that's how you say it, they produced it, and I got it. Purchased it, got it, opened it, and it was like very shiny, like high gloss, almost unshuffleable because the cards kind of stick together. And it killed me because I'm like, I love the artwork, but I just can't use it. And so if I physically cannot use it, I'll return it or gift it to somebody else or leave it in the little library by our house, because paper and quality is really, for me, a very important part of tarot.
Anybody else? Hard nose?
I agree with Nick that, to me, I have taken a second look at decks when I find out that they're linen and black core stock. I've taken, like I said, taken a second look, or I might not have otherwise, but just the fact that they're using such high quality, because the tactile experience is so important to me. It's always a second look for me. But as far as hard nose, again, if the creator says it's not AI, but it obviously is, that's what, because it's deception as far as I'm concerned. And counterfeit decks, forget it.
Oh yeah,
going to happen. If it's on Temu or Shane, or I think that's how you say it, AliExpress, Wish, whatever, I would never buy a deck from there. Anything that's gory, has strong Christian overtones, a lot of angels, that kind of thing, that's just not me. So, and big-headed decks. Like, those really big, almost doll-like, those massive heads.
The big eyes, the big...
Oh, yes.
Not for me. And really busy collage decks, I can't do. Because it just messes with my head. That's it. It's a lot.
So hard nose decks. Tara, Dani, any hard nose when it comes to decks? I'm not buying it no matter what.
Yeah. Well, I agree with Lisa. Like, obviously, I think we all would probably agree, like counterfeit, and people that don't state that it's AI or whatever, like people that are kind of deceptive about anything about the deck is not appreciated. For me, anything that has any very strong socio-political themes in it, it's just, I don't want that in my tarot. It can exist for whoever needs it or wants it, but it just isn't what I want in my tarot practice.
Yeah, I totally agree. Counterfeit decks are a big no-no overall. I think for me, other than that, I can't really say I have a really hard pass. For me, it's all about art. It's just what catches me and what doesn't. Other than that, I think that's like my main thing. I can't, because I've always been like, well, I don't really like this, and then I'll end up having a deck that has, whatever in there. I'm like, I'm such a liar. But like, just like a really hard pass, I totally agree. Deceptive, don't tell me that it's one thing and it's not. And no counterfeit. Like, it's just uncalled for. It's stealing, bottom line, and that's my no.
Yeah, I have two things. One is there's this deck, I can't remember the name of the deck, but it's a very dark deck of mostly nude men, very kind of demonic. Do you know what's it called?
Is it black and red? Is it like, oh God, what is it?
You want me to
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. So I really liked it, but every time, just the idea of using the deck, I just couldn't because it just felt so demonic. Like it was just like I just can't. I just can't. And you know, it's a beautiful,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful deck. The men are gorgeous, but I just can't. I just can't.
Be careful because there's lots of
Yeah.
you're okay with.
You
Yeah,
gotta put a little finger.
Yeah, but the little finger. Like I have this Saint Jinx, and like that one is like, well, I can't show any of this on here, but like
It is
yeah, but
very pretty.
it's
I remember you
beautiful.
saying that to me, that you thought it felt like kind of demonic. Well, I mean, look,
it's
like
I mean,
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's and so I just like no, I just can't. I just can't. I just can't. Then there, the other one I've talked about this a little bit is old lady decks. I just can't do old lady decks. You know, decks that feel like, you know, a doily. I just can't do them. And it's kind of hard. It's like pornography. You know when you see it.
yeah.
It's the same. Yeah, I know when I see it, yeah, it's an old lady. I just can't do it. But I do think I have one old lady deck. But it's
I want to know if I have any old lady decks.
I'm
Like,
pretty
because I
sure
like I
I
want to.
don't have old lady decks. I'm pretty sure I don't. I think I've gotten rid of any like I call like the Doreen Virtue old style kind of like I think that's where my old lady deck kind of comes in. With like what you're talking about with like it looks like doilies and
yeah. The only one I have, and it feels like it has a little doily border, is the Angel Blessings or something like that.
yeah.
They're like different colors and it has little people from the old days, and at the bottom it has like a little paragraph. That's an old lady deck, but that's a very spiritual deck for me. And so that one got a pass because it kind of reminds me of like my grandmother and, you know, things like that. But yeah, those are my two hard no's. It's like I can't do demonic and I can't do old ladies, and put them together. I'm like, no.
What about like novelty decks? Like I consider like, and I don't have what I'll consider like a novelty deck is like something based on like a movie or like a television show, like even like, and I want it but I won't purchase it, is Christina Ricci's Cat Full of Spiders, just because like I love her, but I consider that to be kind of like a little bit of a novelty deck. But kind of like Dani, I'm like, I own the Buffy the Vampire Slayer like deck, and I love it because I love the show, and from a storytelling device, like I think it's really well done. I watched Lisa's video, or when she released like kind of like and talked about it, and how like some of the entries in the guidebook were a little bit off or kind of misprinted. That's probably the version I have, but I think as like a novelty deck, I think it was really well done, and I try to avoid them, and I don't know why, but like it's warming. It feels warm. Or even like tarot for all ages. Like I saw another Instagram follower like that I follow. It's a very childlike deck, but what I said when I bought it and when I use it, it feels very warm, and I feel like if you're sick or you're feeling kind of crappy about yourself, like to use it as just like a nice little hug. And so like I keep it, even though I don't use it that frequently, it's just fun to like, if you're feeling down and out, it's a great deck, I think. So
yeah.
I think most of them that come out, I'm like, I don't like them. Like the Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and you know, and then the court cards are really like throwaways because they're like pip decks. Can't stand them. But there are two decks that I think are done extremely well. That's the Lord of the Rings, and I'll show you. But the other one is Game of Thrones.
Oh, the Game of Thrones is that
They did an amazing job with it.
that was probably the best in my opinion.
Now there are a couple Lord of the Ring decks out there, and I think they're awful. To be frank,
Same.
but this deck, this creator on Etsy did such an amazing job with the
Oh, I've seen this one. Yeah.
It is stunning. The Magician. These are in order. I just
I
think
like the borders.
I do
they're
too.
fantastic.
Yeah.
The cards. Oh, and I love this. This is the Empress and the Emperor.
Very cool.
Oh, I love that.
And let me show you the Lover's card. I love this Lover's card.
Oh my God, that's so cute.
Yeah, I mean, this deck is fantastic. Like, if you're a big fan of Lord of the Rings, this is the one you want. The creator is S.A., or the illustrator is S.A. Fickers, and this is on Etsy.
That's
So
awesome.
I think a very reasonable price. The cardstock is fair. I wouldn't say it's the best, but it
If
feels
it's not
good.
like, if you can see yourself in the card, it's too shiny. Like
Right.
that's just my it's there's some like what's that deck that came out? It's called the Supernova. It's very like queer, very gender
Oh, yeah.
inclusive. The artwork is phenomenal, but they printed it on like essentially plastic coated paper. And I'm like, oh God, like it's just in case you're, I guess maybe you're eating SpaghettiOs and trying to read at the same time. It like prevents it from getting like, oh, another kind of deck that I don't really like is when you take the Rider-Waite Smith, when you take just like, kind of like Pamela Coleman Smith and you take all the colors out. That to me, I think kind of just, again, it might work for some people who are more focused on the symbols, which of course I think is a very cool way to get in. But for me, the colors just kind of have to be there, like because I think that the deck was so considered with color and color theory that to take it out or to put it all in gold or all in black, I mean, it's super chic and sleek, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, he just kind of took a little bit of its soul away.
Do you have any hard noses, sir? You said oh yeah, you did. You gave me a whole spiel.
But I did.
Yeah.
We were talking about the Lord of the Rings, which I've got a copy of that, as you know. I did recently get a fandom deck. I don't have many, but I saw a walkthrough of this, and well, not a walkthrough, but it was actually on Dawn Michelle's channel, and she talked about this deck, and she thought, oh, this is nothing like the game. And yet when I got the deck, my best friend and I, who've been playing World of Warcraft for like almost 20 years, and we've been playing consistently in that time, we went through card by card and we were like, oh my God, this is perfect. Oh my God, this is perfect.
That's so fun.
It looks like the books, like the art is more like the books in
Okay.
color and tone, but the characters that were chosen for each of the cards were absolutely perfect. And I have them out of order here, so I'm just going to see if I can find maybe one. Okay, so here's an example. This is the Devil, and this character is Xalatath, and she is like the big bad, and maybe the biggest bad that the game has seen in years. And she's so perfect for that card.
That's awesome.
And yeah, like every single card, we looked at them and we were like, oh, that's so-and-so, or this is that character, or oh my God, that's so perfect. So although it doesn't look like the game, it looks like the story. And I love it.
That's always great when you can find fandom decks. I have a couple of Harry Potter decks because that's my jam. I love my Harry Potter. I love Lord of the Rings, things like that. I was highly disappointed in the Labyrinth because I was waiting for that, and I get so disappointed, and I'm like, I don't know why I hype myself up, because it's like I think we all have that fandom, especially our own fandoms, in our head, and we want it to be perfect. We do. And for me, like we were talking about, the Game of Thrones that was done was probably my favorite because
It was so good.
it was like, I know they have like repeating characters, but like I even spoke with, and the artist reached out to me, and like we talked about it, and he put clues in there as to the other characters, and like there's so much depth in there that I think it was just so well done because he knew the tarot and he knew this story back and forth, and so it just made it all the more special to me. And so I have to say, of them all, that's probably my favorite one because I felt like it had the most attention. versus a lot of the inside editions, which did feel very Pippish, where it was kind of thrown together and stuff. Now Lisa Pepez with the Buffy deck, she's shown like all the different versions. She's got like all of them. She loves that one. And for me, I'm like old school. I remember the Buffy movie. I've never watched the TV series. So like for me, I'm like, well, where's the yellow jacket? Like, I know the movie, so I don't know. I can't speak to that one, but I'm glad that they're getting better. And I love when people find their fandom, like the way you were talking about World of Warcraft, how you were like, oh, but the books. And like, that's how I feel about Harry Potter. I'm like, but you miss it if you're just looking at the movies, like you're missing it. And so, those are always really hard to do, but I'm so glad that those are coming out, but they do sometimes feel like novelties, and sometimes we just want to hug, and that's the best way to do it.
Yeah, this Lord of the Rings, when I got it, I remember the movies, but some of the cards I couldn't really remember like the scenes, so it inspired me to go watch Lord of the Rings again. So that was one of the things that I really liked about this deck. It got me back into watching the movies again.
Love it.
Now, how do you handle readings that are unclear? Everybody stopped.
That's
well, I'll tell you what I do.
I can speak.
What I do, literally, because that happens quite a bit, I just sit and I stay quiet and I wait. I just sit and wait. And if I'm by myself, it's very comfortable. If I'm with somebody else, I wait and I just stay with the cards, and they're looking at me waiting, and I'm like, you gotta wait. And then eventually, a thought will come in my mind, and right before I know it, all of a sudden the reading starts, and I go with it. I find that if I don't try to force it, if I don't get anxious, if I don't start thinking, oh my God, they're going to be upset, I'm taking too long, they're not going to think that I'm a real reader. If I just really just keep that out, it will come. So everybody has clear readings. Wow.
Oh, I was going to say, I think that was my question, because I'm always curious, because that's something that I feel like I deal with it different ways depending on, most of the time I'm reading for myself. So sometimes I'm like, well, let's see what I've been doing lately is pulling Lenormand, because I've been following along with Lisa's Let's Learn Lenormand thing, and I'm actually really loving it. But I've been doing that. Sometimes I just say to myself, oh, this doesn't make sense, but maybe it's something that I needed to consider, or maybe it points me in the direction of clarity, or whatever the case is. Like, so maybe this isn't saying this is what it is, but this is what you needed to hear so that you could get on the right path. And then a lot of the times I just say, well, whatever, I'll see you tomorrow. And then it's my day.
Yeah, I think for me, if there is like a stuck point, I think as readers, sometimes we have this tendency to want to like boil the ocean and try to say everything all at once and try to kind of give our clients or ourselves like a wave of information. And so if there is a stuck point, it's almost like kind of like a clog in this kind of like fire hose that you want to kind of do. That's my kind of thing anyway. So if I just take it piece by piece, if I just take one card in a larger reading and just kind of focus on what I know about that card, it usually kind of like chips away at kind of the stuck point. If you just kind of focus in on something small before trying to do something large, I think that can sometimes help unplug. And then sometimes if you're stuck on like kind of a combination of cards, what I do is I'm just like, I think, Benny, you and I have talked about this on how sometimes a reading can be more of a gesture for an interpretation rather than like a whole kind of system. It just can be like a feeling, like a 3-card reading that you might designate as like a past, present, future, something that simple. Sometimes when I pull for myself daily, I just look at it as like kind of a feeling or just kind of a broad stroke as opposed to like details. So sometimes I think, Tara, to your point, like it's just like, okay, just this, and maybe tomorrow we'll get something more detailed. Like we'll just kind of, sometimes the cards don't want to tell you all the details.
Yeah, like the gesture idea. You get the 5 of Pentacles, the 10 of Swords, and or the 3 of Swords, 10 of Swords. It's like, oh my gosh. you're like, okay, today's the day that I need
Oof. Yeah.
For
It's like
sure.
a slap, or like a stabbing, or just kind of like kind of like feeling.
It could possibly be a bad day if I'm not careful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so this leads to the next question. And it goes with the previous one with my answer is, do you strictly use spreads to read, or do you allow your cards to guide you? And I don't really, so when I get stuck, I allow the cards to decide who's going to come up. So like if I have a spread, then I kind of feel boxed in. And I get the reasons for spreads, and I use some of them some of the time. But I generally let the cards speak to me. And sometimes it's the middle card, sometimes it's the end card, sometimes it'll be the first card, but then I'll go into the third card and then end up in the middle. So I really let the message just come through. And I find that for me, that really is like it feels very organic and feels very me. And I always get the message that I need when I do it that way. When I do spreads, sometimes that's when I feel myself forced, or I tend to get stuck.
Yeah, I completely agree. When like, to go back to that question and then to lead into that one, there are times where, yeah, sometimes you're just faced with something and you're just like, I don't know where this fits in. And I will flat out say it. I'm like, I'm going to be honest, I don't know where this fits in. But here's what I can tell you about this card. This is usually how it plays out, which is not always how I read, you know? But a lot of times when I get stuck, I just kind of go back to that. And I'm like, well, if this fits somewhere, we'll just kind of allow that to come back. We'll come back there. And when it comes to spreads, I love to play around with spreads. I like to, I will use them, I'll play with them, but my favorite is to literally shuffle and lay out cards until I feel like I'm done, and then allow the cards to talk to me. Like, there are times where I will cluster them and I'm like, I feel like all of these are like all together. So let's talk about this as a group, you know, let's go over here. So I'm feeling like this is kind of pulling into here. And I just kind of allow everything to kind of talk to me. And I think, you know, Tara mentioned Lenormand, and I think learning Lenormand is a really, really great skill for anyone who reads tarot, because it really does teach you to look at the position of the cards and see how they're clustering and what they're trying to tell you. Where are they looking at? Are you coming backwards and forwards? Is this on top of another card? Is it influencing something that you're having? And I think when we do strictly spreads, now this is just my opinion, but I feel like sometimes, like Benny said, it does box you in and you feel like, oh, well, I can only talk about this at this point. But what about everything around it? What is informing that card, and how is that feeling? And because I am quite an intuitive reader when it comes to that, and I like to look at a bigger scope and I like to cluster things sometimes, I think that's what really helps get it unstuck. And sometimes there is an outlier, and usually it's for a reason, right? Like, usually there's something about it that sometimes you find out later, like, especially when I do video readings, I'm just like, I'm going to be honest, this is what I'm feeling from this card. It has nothing to do with anything I've said. And that's usually when I'll get back that feedback that's just like, oh my God, this is what that meant. And this is whatever. And I'm like, I love that, because it really proves like, this is not for me. This is for you. You know, and I think that just allowing ourselves to explore the cards in that way and just be honest, like, this doesn't flow with what I'm saying, but this is what I'm getting. And just being confident enough to just do that, I think is a really big skill, because it does feel caught. And I do get scared still. Sometimes I'm like, but this seems so weird. But you let it flow. I think that just comes with just being confident in that. I mean, the cards are the cards are the cards, you know? And with playing cards, I think that's really helped, because, I mean, a spade is a spade. If it's bad, it's bad. I can't sugarcoat it. It is what it is. And so I think that's really taught me to just allow things to flow. And I think that's why I enjoy just kind of laying out and flowing from there over anything else.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Dani, as soon as you said that, I was like, I've had readings from you where you've been like, Tara, I don't know what the heck this means, but, and then I'm like, I do. And then I was like, I've had readings with like, one of my favorite things is me and my sister will just sit down for like hours and just like pull cards together. And there's been times where I'll be pulling cards for her and I'm like really trying to like make it mean something. And she's like, I know exactly what this is. Or there'll be times when we're reading for me and I'm like, I don't like get like, if I'm with her and I pull cards for myself, I'm like, I don't get it. And she's like, it's this, like, it's, you have this issue or whatever it is. So yeah, I think maybe it's, you don't need to have the answers, especially if you're reading for someone else. There's two people participating, like, so
Yeah.
maybe sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to have all the answers. I think you were kind of saying that, Nick, like, but it could be a collaborative, like co-creation.
Yeah, I say like in a reading, it's if there's one client, it's like you, them, the cards, and the universe. That's like there's four kind of like people like that are like all chatting at around the sign. And when I'm pretty traditional when it comes to spread, like for clients, I usually do Celtic Cross and then 5 cards and smaller. But I think kind of Dani, what you were saying is like to me, that's like when the spread breaks. Like it's almost like kind of Pangea like, where like we've got this one big mass and then half of it breaks off. And that's about something else. And even sometimes in 5 cards, like when I go out and do events like around town, like I'll sometimes be like, this card has nothing to do like with what this is happening over here. Or sometimes this card is like kind of the umbrella of the whole spread. So I like it when it gets more PC is not the right word, but almost like it breaks off and becomes like something else for again, to what everyone's saying, like for what they need to know. And I'm like, I'm not getting this. It's not part of any of this nonsense that's happening over here. And they're like, oh, because like even in 5 cards, people will be like, who aren't familiar. Like there's a bar here in San Francisco that I do once a month at. People are like, I've never done this before. Like, and can I ask a question about love and career? And I'm like, sure, who knows? Like, let's just throw down some cards. And usually they're like, and I'm like, all of these things can be answered in as many as 10 and as few as 5. Like, and so people are like, wow, like I can't believe that it can all happen at the same time. And I'm like, well, we're human. Like a lot of things can happen. A lot of things can be true all at once. And so if the spread stays together and answers everything, great. If the spread starts to break apart, that's fine too. So you just have to, and I think that's where your intuition really does kind of kick in. And it's like, girl, I'm not feeling this. Like this is broken. This is busted. So we gotta tackle these in chunks. So
yeah.
You know, this is the first time I have heard anybody talk about, no, I don't know what this means, you know, like, wow. And that like, this is, you know, I get all this, but this I don't. And I really love that you did that because like, for me, that frees me up to be able to, because maybe I'm stuck because it doesn't belong, but I don't see it that way. And I stay quiet for a long period of time. But I don't think I'm the only person, you know, probably who's going to be watching this that ever heard that this card doesn't go with the rest of the spread. So I think that's really a valuable lesson that you just shared. Okay, so what cards give you the ick? I think that's a good one.
Like, okay.
There's something about the traditional 5 of Swords. It's it's pardon my French, but it's the shit-eating grin of like the guy in front who's just kind of like, I'm like, I just want to hit him. Like, you know, it's just kind of like, and that's, I think, what the impetus for the card for me means. It's like overpowering or being overpowered. And it's just that grin where I'm just like, oh God, like if I saw you on the street, I would like not want to be near you. If everyone, let me see if I can pull him out. Everyone continue.
I definitely know what you mean. That is like, yeah. Between that one and the 7 of Swords, it's got those vibes where you're just like, you little shit. Like, I don't want to see you in my spread because you always bring trouble.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have an ick card, but I think a card that gives me like the heebie-jeebies is I think it's the 9 of Swords with like the anxiety being in the bed, because I can really relate to that with when I was younger and was all into my addiction, the drugs, the alcohol, and then being in that bed and like, what did I do? I can't believe I did this again. And, or waking up, oh my God, what happened last night? Looking at my phone and, oh my God, all these messages and what are they going to say? And I literally would like hit play, delete, because I didn't want to know. And so that image takes me back to a very difficult part in my life where, anxiety was just a part of what my life looked like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's probably the Nine of Cups, because I just, in the RWS, that little guy, I hate him. Like, I don't, and it's like, I like the message of the card, but
The message.
he looks like a smug, like, I don't know. Maybe they're just putting his face on there.
I feel that.
It looks like a greed card. When I look at it, I think of greed, but that's obviously not the message of it. But that I can't get, like, to me, that's...
Oh my God, now that you say that, I'm never going to get that out of my head. He does. He looks like a little...
Yeah, I don't like him.
And then this was the other guy, like being like, like, I don't know, it's the grin. It's like so gross.
You, Lisa, do you have an it card?
The Nine of Swords makes me feel very similar to you because I do struggle with anxiety at times. The Seven of Swords is definitely one as well, because it always kind of just feels like, okay, there's something here that's not right, something going on that isn't right, and that always makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So
I remember
the Nine of Cups, yeah, because he does. He looks so smug and like just so proud of himself. Like, look what I've got, Yeah, it's funny.
I remember someone telling me that their favorite card was the Seven of Swords, and I was like, I question your character now. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that is the sneakiest little turd of the whole deck.
I'd have to agree.
It's
I think
like,
it's funny that everyone talked about minors.
Oh, yeah.
I can't think of any majors.
I know. I don't really have, and I mean, like, I can't talk about the tower, obviously, like that's, I feel like with the majors, like everything has such a great purpose that it's really hard to have an ick because like it's part of the whole story,
Yeah.
Are there like background cards, like cards that like, for me, like I forget about the Hanged Man or the Hanged One all the time. And then when I see them, I'm like, oh, I forgot how cool you are. Like, it's like kind of like, a friend that you grew up with and it's like, oh, you are actually kind of cool. Like, let's go out. Like, I always forget about that card. And it's also, it's in the middle. Like, he's like the kind of the fulcrum of the whole major system. And I always forget about him, and I'm like, girl, you're holding this whole shit show up. Like,
That's so funny that you say that, because if I had one that I constantly forget, it's the Hanged Man. Constantly. Because I'm always like, okay, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm like 12. Oh shit, 12.
Yeah.
Oh, the Hanged Man.
Oh yeah.
Like, I wonder what it is about that card that we just lose sight in. That's so strange.
Let's talk about the naked baby for a second.
Oh, the naked baby.
Yeah, in the sun.
Okay. Yeah.
The sunflowers, poor Benny.
Yeah, can we talk about those hideous sunflowers? But I will say, Nick, that when I saw the sunflower in your deck, I was like, oh, that's beautiful. It was the first time that a deck that had a sunflower, I was like enamored. I've seen some other ones that have sunflowers. There were some that like the little baby sunflowers, which I'm okay with, but sunflowers are so damn ugly. I can't stand them. And so I'm like, why this flower of all flowers, to represent, this wonderful day, why not roses? Why not daisies? Why not tulips? A sunflower. It's like,
I guess you're not a big fan of, who's it, the Queen of Wands? She also holds one in her left hand. Yeah.
But the baby and the sunflowers just kill that card. But
The
I will
baby
say
is weird.
that Bohemian Gothic has a wonderful um, sun card that I really like for that little child.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So I like this question because it leads to the next one, which is which minor arcana do you feel most connected to and why?
Ooh.
Will
Well,
those include the court cards or?
No, which minor
Okay.
arcana?
okay, so for me, that's easy. I have her right here. The Three of Cups is probably my favorite.
The Three of Cups?
The Three of Cups. That's one that I will always look towards. Like I want to see that coming together, that celebration, that I don't know, there's something about it that I want to make sure that it has that togetherness and that happiness and that kind of celebration. And that's one of the first minor arcana that I did in my deck, and that's what's hanging right here, because like it was so important to me to show that coming together. And I mean, for me personally, I like to see the three women in the same way that Pixie, portrayed that. It's just such a beautiful depiction of friendship and togetherness and working together and having your different opinions that kind of bring everything together. I think that's the one minor arcana that really like I love, that I just really go towards.
I know which one's yours, Nick.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say like if court cards count, we know. But when it comes to just like kind of like the cards, like and the Page of Cups, like the history, like it's funny because I have no water in my big three. I am not like a watery emotional person, but I remember reading. It was the second tarot deck I ever purchased. It was Tarot of the Old Path. It's the very highly kind of witchy, but very bright, very kind of like jovial. And for me, that was one of the easier decks to kind of like interpret because like the images were just a quick get. And I remember reading in the book about, and the Page of Cups in that deck is so just sassy and so like girl, like he's got the cauldron. It's like it's the Page of Cauldrons, and he's just like dipping his little finger in it, so like kind of like sassfully. And I was like, "Ooh, I like her. Like, what is this going on?" And the similarities and like the hair color was the same, the eye color was the same for me. And so as like a 13-year-old, like sitting in their room in St. Louis, Missouri, being like, "Ooh, like." I like him. And then the book said like someone that's adept at magical arts, someone who can see the unseen, someone who is, it had made no mention of like kind of the eternal child or kind of the playing around or the levity that card brings, which is kind of something that I think came a little later for me. But I was like, ooh, like he just looks like a bitch and I love it. Like, I just love it. In that particular deck. And then when it comes to other decks or other cards, I think the Four of Swords, I think the relationship I have with it is so, it's a very quiet card. And what I love is when reading for other people, they get very anxious about it because this individual looks like they've passed away or in kind of a mausoleum. But to offer that insight, it's like, girl, you just need to like chill for a minute, like take yourself out of circulation, usually mentally, socially, and just chill. And I think that to deliver those messages, I think to people, like especially like who are out and busy, to say like you can grant the permission to just like you can stay in bed today. Like I think that's like a fun message to deliver with a card that looks a little bit kind of ominous.
I like that.
What about you, Tara?
Mine is the Four of Swords. Yeah, because
okay.
Because I'm sleepy, but also because mostly because I like it because I don't feel like I can turn off my brain. Like not like, oh, I'm some genius. Like it's not a good thing. And yeah, whenever I talk to people about it, they're like, just don't think about it. And I'm like, you can do that. Like I don't
How
understand.
Yeah.
So that the idea of that, if we're connecting the swords with the mind and rest of the mind, like that to me is like, oh, like I would love to just truly like embody that. So whenever that comes up, it's very soothing.
Lisa?
For me, it's the Five of Cups.
Oh, I'm surprised. I thought you were going to say the Hermit.
Well, no, we're talking minors, right?
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So yeah, the Five of Cups. And, for me, I have an intimate relationship with grief. And in the last several years, I've lost so many loved ones. And so it's very hard. But often I see people interpret the Five of Cups as, oh, you're focusing on the wrong thing. You're focusing on your grief, your loss. You should focus on this thing over here. But I see it so much more than that. It's that sometimes we can't do anything except focus on that grief. We don't have a choice. Yes, there's still good things over here. There's still, we know that. And people who are grieving, they know that. They know there's still things to be grateful for, things to be happy for. But right now, this is my grief. It's staring me in the face, and I'm staring at it, and I can't look away yet.
Oh, so
And
powerful.
that is the Five of Cups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So powerful.
I've mentioned mine several times, but the first time I saw it, I loved it. I related to it immediately, which was the Five of Pentacles. When I first saw it, it reminded me of my mother and me. My mother's very religious, and we grew up very poor. It was a very, very difficult childhood for me growing up. But one thing is that no matter how bad it was, we just kept moving forward. We just kept living our lives. And we had the church until the church turned on me. But we had the church. And my mother always believed that God would be able to, be there for us to get to the other side. And, and I just saw so many ways in how my mother's faith really propelled us into a different world. Like I'm the first person to go to high school in my family tree.
Wow.
And it was because my mother really, wanted me to go and really impress the importance of it. And here I am with a master's degree. I'm a therapist. I own my own house, which is crazy. I have a brother who's getting his MBA. My niece is going to nursing school. My other niece who wanted to quit high school is an accountant. She's getting her master's. And so that just reminds me that, the glass, the stained glass with the light at the back, that represents hope for me. And so when I look at that card, I see that, yes, there is going to be struggle, but you just got to continue moving forward because there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
So that's how I see that card. And and how I will read that card will be based on the cards that are around it. So it can be, you're nearing the end. There is, your things are going to get better, or you're at the beginning of a journey, or you're in the middle of it, and it's going to be very challenging. And it just depends on the card around it. Oh, so since we're talking about the cards, so how did you learn the court cards, and what advice would you give to a new reader on them? Like, how did, you see the Page of Pentacles, how did you get to a point where you could decipher them from the other pages, and are you in a place where you can lay them out and it's very easy for you to read?
I think those are always a challenge. Go ahead, Lisa.
They are. I was just going to say, for me, I can't say that I know them well or that I know them every single time, but I understand what the individual suits mean. And so that helps me to narrow it down. And then I understand that the pages are the have this kind of youthful energy, and it's all new, and and then the knights are more like charging in, like they all have a different type of energy. The queens have a kind of energy. The kings have a different kind of energy. So attaching that energy to the energy of the suit has helped me to understand them better.
Yeah, I'm totally in the same boat. I think elementally we have kind of that to work with, and then, the voracious learner, the charger, the caregiver, and then the optimum, or kind of the all-seeing eye. For reading, sometimes I think for some individuals who have never been exposed to tarot or who are new to it, I like to attach like pop culture icons to them because it helps you kind of like understand who they are. Like for me, again, living in the Bay Area, like I like to say that the Page of Wands is like a young Steve Jobs who was like told no his entire life. Like, no, like you'll never make it to anything. Like, and this page and Pamela Cole and the RWS is in the middle of this like desert. And he's like, no, I see life. I see something I can do. Like, I know I can do it. And I just need to keep at it and learning. And I have this voracious fire at me. So I like to like bring in certain archetypes, or like, the Queen of Swords is Lucille Bluth from Arrested Development. Like she's kind of this like, very, very kind of strict, stern character. She wants what's best for you, but you know, she's going to like lay down the line. So sometimes bringing in like a musician or a movie star or someone on television or in literature or in art can also, I think, be a little bit helpful, because it's like, oh, I know you. Like I saw you on that show that one time, and I love you, or like I prefer not to see you today.
Yeah, absolutely. I do that a lot. I kind of like associate them with, like you said, literature or movies, art, music. Like sometimes I'm like, oh, this whole vibe is like this song, right?
Yeah.
So like I'll think of that song every time I, pull out a card. I'm like, oh, okay, so I get it. Like sometimes we're just like a fragile little thing, or like we're trying to learn something. What are we learning? We're going after it. So I always try to do something similar where I am associating it with something or someone else. I think that's the easiest way to do it. That way I can talk about it in a sense of this could be a person or a situation. It's a whole vibe. It's a vibe.
It's a mood, a vibe.
Yeah, it's a total mood.
Throw the whole cord out. That's what I think. No, but actually, Nick, as you were talking, and you were talking about associating it with like characters that we're familiar with, I was like, I should take my Wild Unknown Archetypes deck and lay out all my core cards and pick an archetype for, because we all say like they're archetypes, but like what archetypes are they? Like,
yeah, which ones?
Yeah, so I feel like if I did that, maybe in my brain, it would help me a little bit. So I'm going to do that when we're done. Yeah.
You want? Good.
So
you should do a video on.
You really should.
Channel.
Okay, I will.
I think that would be a good one.
Okay.
I will tell you that the court cards, Lisa really did help me with this, talking about associating the elements to each one of them and what their underlying character is. So for some of them, I get it, but it's just a very basic knowledge. But I have found that really I tend to avoid wanting to learn them because it feels overwhelming. And I don't think I'm the only one that feels that way.
Well, especially because traditionally, a lot of times they represented people. And they were very much like dark hair or, light eyes, or it was very specific. And I think people get really worried about stuff like that. And I'm not going to lie, there are sometimes that I'll pull a card and I'll be like, okay, I can't. Okay. So I just keep seeing this person that's got whatever. That's usually pretty rare for me, but like, I'm not going to say that it doesn't happen, because it does sometimes. But I think that's where a lot of people's fear comes in, because like, I'm like describing a person, or I'm trying to describe a person. And I think it's way more than that. It's like, I think when we can loosen those reins and think about them like as a mood, as a vibe, as a something as a whole, I think it becomes a little easier, and we can be a little easier on ourselves when those things pop up and just look at them as like where their base is. Like, I love when like a Knight of Pentacles comes along, because I'm like, okay, you have a field here. You have stopped. You're planning what's really going on right here, taking in the whole scope of what's on the card, not just the person, is also something that really helps me as well. Like, what are they doing? Are they moving? Are they not moving? Do they look like they're over it? Are they nurturing? And again, the cards around it can really help. Like, where are they looking towards? Are they moving forward? Are they looking backwards? Are they trying to gain something? Are they giving something? You know, and just kind of moving it in that way.
Lisa, actually, we got maybe like 4 questions. So, this is, I think, a very interesting question. Where has tarot been an ineffective way to get an answer or guidance?
Ineffective?
For me, there's a moment that kind of sticks out in my head from I was reading at a piercing and tattoo parlor here in San Francisco, and this woman came in, and I already knew immediately, like, this isn't going to be. It's not that it's not going to be positive. It's just that I'm not going to be able to give her exactly what she needs to hear. And and it was just a vibe. It was just, again, a vibe, a mood, an energy, kind of like, I don't know. So she sits down and we start reading, and without divulging too much of the details, like, I was like, you need to go see law enforcement. You need to go see, like, you need to go to a hospital. Like, you need to, like, kind of go into these kind of, like, more, cards are not going to help you here. Cards are not going to tell it, like, this is like an immediate need. And so tarot was going to be an ineffective way for her to deal with the challenges that were not only present in her, but also the challenges that were coming, towards her. So as I was reading, I was like, tarot is not going to be an effective way for you to learn or to get help, but you need to do this on your own. And I think the other thing when it comes to ineffectiveness as tarot is people who rely on it continuously, where your reading starts to, it's like when you say a word over and over and over again, it starts to lose its meaning. Similarly, I think if you continuously read or go to your cards for answers or for guidance, it starts to fall apart. So I think sometimes repetition can be an ineffective, way. Like, if you're using the cards to make every decision in your life, it's like, God, like, you are paralyzed by kind of like your experience. So I think it's a balancing act in the relationship you have with the cards too. So ineffective, and like, you need to find a police officer, like, or some kind of law enforcement or something like that. And then also, sometimes you have to make decisions on your own without the help of the universe, God, angel, whatever you believe in. Like, sometimes you just have to have that autonomy and turn away from the cards, because if you keep doing it, it starts to lose its meaning.
Yeah, totally.
I think people who are concrete thinkers, I think, is very ineffective, because they take their reading as is, and that's what it is. There's no flexibility. There's no way to be able to interpret in any different way within your life. And so, like, if you get a reading that makes you nervous, then all of a sudden, you have anxiety through the whole day or through the whole week or whatever length of time that the reading was for. And so instead of being able to see where it could lead from, you're preparing for the shoe to drop. So I think that's an effective way. And then for me, it's other ethical issues, like someone who has trauma, going for a reading for trauma, I don't think it's going to be effective. And people who do this, I have a really big issue with, because I do not believe you have the skills to be able to do this, because you don't have the knowledge necessary for it, because you can re-traumatize somebody with a reading, and you can put them in a worse place than they came in the door for. So ethically, there's some places where I think they can be very ineffective and frankly harmful.
Yeah, I agree.
I think so as well. Like, when I was going to say that when I'm in the middle of something major, something that's affecting me, overwhelming me emotionally, reading the cards is not going to help me. Now, as I processed my grief, I did use the tarot and oracles to help me process that. But that was when I was a little bit farther along in my grief journey. I wasn't right in the depths of it. So when when you're going through something and you're feeling really, really emotional, that for me is the time when I don't turn to the tarot, because I know that
Same.
I'm probably not going to be reading it correctly anyway.
Yeah.
Same. When I'm going through something, especially for myself, I know, I went through some just really racking emotional stuff this past year, and I would not pull cards on it. I would not, will not gonna do it, because that is not going to benefit me. That is only going, like Benny said, that is only going to traumatize me more if something comes out that I don't want to see, that I'm anticipating. And again, when it comes with that energy, it's like you're pulling this energy. You're likely to pull something that's going to bring that up, and to, like Benny said, almost like re-traumatize. Like, I know when I am not in the right mind, when I am not in the right space for tarot, leave it alone. Don't force it. Don't force it. Especially in high emotional states. Like, I'm really kind of conscious about, when people come to me for readings and things like that, because of that same thing. Like, if you're at a 10, we're not doing this today. We're not doing this
Gosh,
today.
could you
No
imagine
way.
flipping out on you?
Yeah, like, this is not when we're doing this. You come back when you're maybe a 5, and then we'll talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to see what you want to see. You're not going to hear. You're not going to take it in, because you're too heightened. And I feel like that's when damage is done, or when you start to, like, overanalyze and you get really scared. And it's like, that's not the purpose of this,
Yeah, I'm glad that you guys all brought that up, because I was like, oh, I'm not the only one. And also, was 2024 like the worst year of everyone's life? Because that was.
I feel like it was. It was probably the worst of mine.
Yeah, like, I'm thinking of a particular scenario where it was the hardest thing I've ever been through, and I also had pretty much no control over what was going to happen. So there was nothing I could do to prevent it. And I also knew that I was going to have a confirmation bias, or it might give me some weird false hope or something like that if I started pulling cards on it. So for me, the solution to it is, like, I'm not going to pull cards. I'm just going to pray. And then that's my path for navigating those type of situations.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. When Precious died, Precious being my dog, it was really, I had her for 15 years. I never had a dog before, so I never lost a dog.
Oh.
And it was very heart-wrenching for me. And so what happens with me is that I will shut down emotionally. And being a mental health therapist, I knew that me shutting down and not processing my grief was going to create other issues in the future. And I know that. So I was in a place where I was kind of numb, not wanting to talk about it, not wanting to look at it. I knew that I needed to process my grief. And I was in a place where I could, because I didn't have all this emotion, because I was, shoving it down. So I had a specific way to do it. I did an oracle cards, and the oracle card was Precious talking to me. So for 7 days, I pulled the card.
That's beautiful.
And I journaled what Precious was saying to me based on that oracle card. And the first 2, I can't remember right off the bat the name of the deck, but the first 2 cards said someone is watching over you. So
Woods, wasn't it?
Sunday was I'm watching over you, and I shuffle, and then the following day someone's watching over you. And so that really, like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. Then the following 7 days, I took the Gentle Tarot, and I used that for my messages for Precious. And so I would write to Precious, like I wrote her these little letters. And by the time I got to the other end of it, there was this great relief. It didn't remove my grief, but it allowed the grief to come up in a way that didn't feel overwhelming, and I could be with it. So working on with the tarot and oracle can be helpful, but you really do have to be in a place where you can process.
Yeah. You have to have the
Yeah.
space for sure.
We're nearing the end. I'm saving what I think my favorite question is going to be for last. Okay. Have you ever had deck overwhelm by owning too many decks, and how have you coped with it? Dani, you have a lot of decks.
I do, but I go through them all the time, man.
How many decks do you got?
I don't know. I don't count them, but I go through them quite often because when we have hurricanes and stuff over here, I pack them up. They have to be able to be packed up, so I can't go crazy with it. Now, I've had a lot of decks come and go. But I fill this, sometimes I have some in my drawer and then I have some hanging. I'll have a few that are on my shelf. But I don't go more than that. When I see that there's more than that, and then there's obviously some that I'm not using, that I'm not touching, that I need to go through, because I try to keep decks that I'm actively using for the most part. There's always going to be exceptions to that rule, but for the most part, I keep decks that I'm actively using, so I might go through them, but I don't allow myself to get to that overwhelmed place, because always in the back of my mind, I'm like, if something goes down, I gotta lug these things somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Oh, anybody else?
Yeah, I've had moments of it for sure. And I usually will reorganize my collection, which honestly makes it worse before it gets better. Because I pull everything out and it's strewn all over my floor, and then I'm like, okay, is it just a matter of do I want to do them by these are my animal decks, these are my pip decks, these are my whatever decks, or do I want to do by season? So I'll reorganize them, but then I do pass them on a lot too. I'll message my friends and say, hey, do you want this or whatever, and just get rid of some. It's a solvable issue for sure.
And you do a capsule, so you're always rotating yours as well, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, Kelsey and I do our little monthly capsule collection, and that was actually that was the intention behind that. Was we were messaging each other and we were like, oh my gosh, poor us, we have too many decks, blah blah blah.
For me.
Give us the bleeding hearts, yeah. And then so we were like, let's do little capsule collections, and actually that has helped a lot because, and especially now doing it for the second year, I'm looking back at the ones that I used in January last year. And there's one in particular that I haven't even used since I used it last year. And I'm like, maybe this is a sign that this one can go find a new home.
Yeah.
Nick, you don't necessarily have a large collection, am I correct?
Yeah, I've kept it much to my, because, we live in an apartment in a major city, there's spaces can be limited. So the rule that I have with not only myself, but was also encouraged by my husband was if they don't fit in my bedside table, my nightstand, anything that kind of exists outside of that, it usually has to be something commemorative or beautiful, like the Dali Tarot, the big book, or I finally got a hold of the Japanese ghost deck, the yokai yochi deck. That was one of my deck. And so once I had that, I'm like, my collection's complete. Once that kind of entered the chat, I'm kind of satiated. But for me, if I
your collection's complete?
I think for me personally, unless something else comes new, and then some people US game systems will send me things and then I review them, I look at them, I play around with them, but then I put them up for grabs on either Instagram or my website. I don't charge for those. I just charge for shipping because I think it's unethical to start selling stuff that you got for free or for comp. But to me, yeah, I'm kind of unless something else catches my eye that I've seen kind of in the wild, I would still love I don't know if I could own all of the old illuminated decks from the Italian 14th century. Of course I would yeah, I could put them in we'll frame them and put them somewhere. But I think to me, I've found kind of what I've liked, and I'm also a minimalist by nature. So having a lot of decks, and I think kind of back to what we were talking about, about when it comes to novelty decks or fandom decks or kind of decks that you just don't resonate with. Like, I have no problem if there's been decks that I've supported on Kickstarter that I'm like, this is going to be fantastic. Like, this is new. And that's where, if my collection needs to be more complete, Etsy and I think Kickstarter is the place to go. But like, I've received decks that I've paid top dollar for. I've opened them, looked through them, and I'm like, this is not for me. Like, and I will get rid of it immediately because it's, again, limit on space. And again, so many of my decks, and I used to rotate decks out like weekly, and that became overwhelming to me because I'm like, I don't want to make another choice. That's what the cards are supposed to do. So I've just gone to monthly. And then if I feel like I'm getting over a deck, like, or I'm using it and I'm just kind of I'm getting bored with it, I'll put it away. I won't necessarily get rid of it, but I'll put it away. And so, yeah, I try to keep a small collection simply because I don't have the space, and I feel like I'd be ignoring some of those decks. I'm like, sorry, girl, like, I'm not using you today or this week or this month or this year. So I'll either, again, like I said, put them up, or the other great place, if you live next to one, is like the little libraries, like the free little libraries, like neighborhood. I put decks in there. Like, I would say maybe 5 or 6 over the course of like 2 or 3 years, and they are gone within a day. Like, people. And it's like I think Teresa Reed said it recently. Like, she did an Instagram or a Patreon post about releasing decks and how you find kind of the energy to do it if you feel sad. And the little library, she was like, oh, I do that too. I'm like, oh, good. Like, it's like you're a tarot fairy. You're just leaving kind of like
I love that.
things all over town. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never given a deck away like that, but I'm a tarot fairy.
Yeah. Same.
I have about 100 tarot decks, or just below that, and I have oracle decks as well. And I find that I do have some decks that I've regretted. I've only given one away, and I still have decks, but I have found that I do have too many decks. And so I will be giving some away or selling some. But I don't ever necessarily feel overwhelmed by the decks I have. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed by my tarot channel. Because I was doing 3 videos a week, and that worked for a while. Now I'm doing, right now I'm not really doing any. But what happens with me is that I love so many of them that I want to use them all today. And so what I have found is one of the challenges in learning the tarot is that I haven't stuck to one long enough to know the complete deck, because I'm always rotating them because I want to use my decks. I want to use them all. I have a lot of out of print decks over here, and I just love them. And so in that way I can feel overwhelmed because I can't wait to get to the next one that I want to use. So I'll use a deck for like 3 days, post on Instagram, and then go get another deck. And if I post more than 3 days, it's because I'm really enjoying that deck. But I don't think I do more than 6 or 7 days with any deck.
Well, I will use there are some that I keep on my desk and I just use over and over and over and over and over again. Which is why, I go through my deck so many times, because there are some I'm just like, it doesn't leave my side.
Yeah.
Like, this is where I'm at right now. Like, recently, the Pagan Otherworlds has been on my deck for 3 weeks because I can't get enough of it. And I've gone through this before where I use that deck for months and months and months. That always stays by me too. I just, there are some that they just speak to me so well that I will just continue to use them. I used to try and rotate, and then I'm like, no, I will sit down at my desk. I will open this. I must look like a crazy person because I will fling the doors open and I'll just sit. And
Same.
I'm like, what?
I do that with my drawers. I open it up and I'm like, y'all are kind of boring. Let's go back to what I know.
To use right now. And I think that's my favorite part when I go to read for someone else, because I'm like, I don't have to worry about what's in my energy, because it's probably going to be the same deck I've been using for the past month and a half. So when I go to read for somebody else, it's so much fun to fling those doors open and be like, what are you feeling right now? Where's it going right now? And ooh, this, ooh, this, ooh, this. And then I get to experience that deck in a totally different way, So yeah, that's my favorite part of the process, is flinging those doors open and just letting the tarot talk to me.
Lisa, how have you been managing your small collection?
I have hundreds. I don't know exactly how many, but it's a lot. I've got 4 bookshelves full, and they're double and triple stacked. And it just all got to be way too much for me this year. So what I did was I said, okay, I got a new little bookshelf. Sorry, I'm going to... This is
Look how beautiful.
So I got this new little bookshelf that sits right next to me in this chair where I spend most of my time. And I said, okay, I'm going to pick my 10 absolute favorite decks. I thought it would be hard, but it actually wasn't. And then I allowed myself 2 more decks for, decks that might be new that have just come in that I want to work with a little bit. So I got 10 tarot decks, and then I chose a few oracle decks, my very favorites, and I put them right next to me. So they're right within reaching distance. And that's what I use most of the time. So, and I'm finding that I'm enjoying my practice a lot more because I'm using decks that I love, so.
There's never been a deck I've gotten rid of or given away or put in the little library that I've ever regretted, which I think is, I'm lucky to have that feeling, but there's never been, because then you think about the person that's using it, like some of the decks that I sold, like people have reached out, like that I've sold, or like have like mailed to people, and they're like, oh, I haven't, I have one client who lives in Arizona, and I just randomly sent her this deck because she had mentioned, oh, I like the look of it. And I was like, well, I like the look of it too, but I don't need it in my collection. So I just mailed it to her. And I was like, there you go. And she was like, oh my gosh. And it's like, cause you think of like the end use, kind of like Dani, what you're saying behind, any project that uses AI or any kind of artistic, there is a person that's behind that. So I think sometimes thinking about the person that's using your deck, pre-loved or secondhand, I think is really amazing. I found, I made a post about this on Instagram, but I found there's a bookstore here near our house that I found one of I think it's called, it was a new Rider-Waite Smith system that came out, like BOTA, I think was the name of this particular deck. I did some research and it came out of Los Angeles, like in the 60s and 70s. And I found the book. I always go to the used tarot section. And I was like, ooh, this book, it's kind of expensive. It's out of print, but I was like, I'll buy it. I was like, I'll hold off on it. But then I went across the aisle and found these vintage tarot cards that were the exact same as the book. And I'm like, I have to have both. So in the same way that I was paying it forward, like all these, and I asked the owner, I was like, do these 2 things come in together? And the guy's like, no, this came in like 5 years ago, and this came in like 6 days ago. So I think in the same way that you're putting it out there, like giving decks away or paying it forward or seeing the end use, I think the universe always kind of puts something back in your court that you didn't even know you needed, wanted, or probably should have in your collection. So I think that we all, in the same way, stumble upon decks that we're supposed to have, even if it's buying them for yourself. Like, I don't believe that, you have to be gifted your first tarot deck. It's like, yeah, that's nice, but like, we're not, like we have Amazon, we have bookstores, we could do whatever we want. But I think in the same way that you kind of pay it forward by letting decks go, like decks can come into your periphery that are just as important.
I've only given 1 deck away. It was the Phantom Tarot deck. It looked beautiful on Kickstarter. And so I ordered it, got it, opened it, held it, and dropped it. It gave me the worst energy ever. I quickly put it in a box. I hated it. And I put it in the back of a shelf, and I left it there for like a year. And then a friend wanted to get into tarot. I said, I got the deck for you. And I gave it to her, and she loves it. She uses it today. And then she was brand new, so I gave her one of my books for beginners. And she just loves that deck. She thinks it's the greatest thing on earth. And I think it's hideous. It has bad energy. I never want to see it again. But I know that's just me, because there are people out there that love that deck.
I have had one experience like that, and I have thrown that deck in the trash. I spent almost $70 getting this deck to me. I used it I had the long and short, I got really sick and I kept having dreams about this deck and I kept feeling this like really weird energy. I literally wrapped this deck up, threw it in the trash can, poured salt around it, and got rid of it that same day. It has only happened one time, and I will never bring that deck into my collection again.
Yeah, same here. I never will. Anybody else have an experience like that? No?
I mean, like the Kickstarter decks, like again, I've gotten like there's 3 that come to mind where I'm like, this is beautiful, and it's not necessarily bad energy. It's just like I'm like, I don't know. There's something about looking at something online and then having it in person. It's that window between the two, that liminal space where you're like, this is great, and then you get it, and it's like, oh, this is. It's not that it's garbage. It's not that it's bad. It's just like, nope. Like, and I just get rid of it, and I'll spend money. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing with the one that I got, I loved the art. I loved everything about it. But y'all, I literally was like sick and like there was just like it was like a whole thing. And so
It's
like
just
there's a part of
a
me that
vibe.
just like it's just a vibe. I'm like I can't do it. And I loved everything about it, obviously. You know, it's just like it's so strange how sometimes it hits that way.
Now that we're talking about it, I'm like, I do have a couple that I really love, like on the surface. It's not so much like the deck has this like I can't put my finger on it why I don't like it or something like that. It's like I'm gonna be a total shit disturber. I won't say like what deck it is or anything like that. But there's some that like, you know, I'll buy this deck, I'll invest a lot of money in it, and then, you know, the creator will, you know, say, if you're this type of person, don't buy my stuff, whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? And then sometimes I just can't get past that.
Yeah.
And separate that from the deck. And I'm like, oh, it ruined it for me. I can't use it anymore.
It ruins it.
So,
yeah.
I've had
that
experience.
You, Lisa, have you had anything like experience like that?
I've had 2 decks like that. One of them I did give away. The other one I still have. But the artwork just was so creepy. So creepy. Mm. The one that I gave away, I will say that one was the Nightmare Before Christmas. I don't even like that film.
I just saw it like 3 months ago.
I love that film.
So I gave that away to a really good friend of mine who gifted it to a friend of hers who didn't have it, and she loved it. She was so excited about it. The one, I still have it, and it's so creepy. I'm sure that some of you probably already know what the deck is. I will say this. I did buy the companion book that goes with it. A rather large coffee table style book.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah,
the art is
I love that
amazing, just not my style.
Not your style, yeah. I feel that. I've had experiences where I'm like, this is not for me, and then like I'll grab it and it'll be the total opposite. Because, you know, there are some decks where I'm just like, no, this is too much. It's too much. It's too much. And then I'll get it in my hands and I'm like, well, maybe not. Maybe I'm weirder than I thought I am.
Who knows what might change, 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road. I might really connect with that. So I've decided to keep it because you never know.
Now, there was a recent thread in one of the Facebook tarot pages that I found very interesting. There were tons of comments. It was a big conversation, like 50, 60, 70 comments about, and the person who posted it generally said, it came across as they were really upset that she couldn't buy certain decks because they were so expensive. And, and several people were like upset that people would buy extra decks of it and then sell it for more, or a creator would sell it for more, knowing that it was going to go out of print and it was a hot commodity. And some of them were very judgy about people who were buying, these expensive decks. And I have bought expensive decks. I have spent more than a couple $100 on 3 decks. And I'm okay with that. I'm very fortunate. I have the resources to be able to do that. And I know a lot of people don't. But you know, I just wanted to know what your thoughts were about out of print decks going for $5, $8, $1,200. I know many of you probably wouldn't buy those. I wouldn't buy $1,000 deck either. But what do you think about people who sell decks that much or buy them?
I don't care. It's up to them.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I know, Benny, you and I have talked about this, about just selling decks in general, and I feel like a creator or whoever, you know, can sell it for whatever they want. If they price it ridiculously, they probably won't sell it. You know what I mean? But it's so relative too. You know, what's expensive to one person is not expensive to the other person. So, I mean, to be mad about that, I mean, you could be mad about it. That's fine.
I mean, you could be mad about it. Yeah, I agree.
You know, I'm not entitled to be able to purchase something at a certain price. Well, and that's a deck at least. You know what I mean?
A deck.
Not talking about medication or anything like that, but like a deck. You know what I mean? I'm not entitled to a creator having to sell me something at a certain price, and they're not entitled to me purchasing it. So we're all adults. You know, you're responsible for how you spend your money. And that's how I feel about it. And, you know, I might have an opinion about it and say, well, that's ridiculous. That's too expensive. Okay, then I won't buy it.
That's fine.
Yeah. One of the comments was blaming the buyers for them going up in price. And that they shouldn't pay for it at that price.
If you want to pay, like, again, if you like, this is like a free will. Like, I get so hyped up with this because I'm like, this is your own bit. People, get out everybody's business. Like, if you want to spend your money that way, I would never spend my money. I would not spend, you know, $20,000 on a Birkin bag. Okay. But I don't give a crap if somebody else does. That's your prerogative.
Yeah.
Like, what does that have to do with me? Nothing.
Yeah, but
I'm not entitled to that. It is not food. It is not medication. It's not water. It's not a necessity. This is something that is not a necessity. So if you want to spend your money, spend it how you will. Just because someone's buying it and someone's selling it, it's like there's going to be a buyer for anything, you know, in the same way that, like, y'all remember Champion used to be like the trash Kmart brand that we used to buy for $20. And now they're like $70 for a t-shirt. Like, there are trends. There's going to be an inflation. There's going to be, people are going to buy it. They're going to pay for it.
But Dani, then I can't buy it because it's too expensive.
Oh, me neither, but I'm just going to cry about it. I literally
make more money.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to make more money, like, whatever. Like, I want the Delta Enduring Tarot so bad I can taste it.
Which one?
And it came, the Delta Enduring Tarot.
Okay.
And that came into my purview last year. Dani, look, somebody's selling it, and they were selling it for $300, and I'm like, I'm not buying it. I'm not doing it. I can't. That's not in my range. I want it so bad, but like, poor me. I'm not gonna do it because I just won't spend that amount of money. I've never spent that amount of money on a deck, and you know, for me, it's not feasible. But for somebody else, that's like, oh hell yeah. I will snatch that up in an instant. And congratulations. I love that for you. But I'm not going to be mad about it.
Oh,
it's not in my price range.
And then they were, some people were upset that, and then they get backup decks, you know, and why do they need a backup deck? And I'm like, so I responded, I'm like, well, I got 2 spoilers, you know. And I bought them both because they were crazy cheap for me. And I'm fine with having a backup deck. And also, sometimes I do buy a backup deck because I could trade it for something else that's expensive that I may not be able to get otherwise.
If you want to buy and light it on fire, that's your, you know,
your prerogative.
You can do it. It's yours. Yeah. When it came to pricing, like for the haptic tarot, like and all of that, and Dani, I'm sure you'd kind of do the same on Make Playing Cards and through your Etsy site. Like it is a topic of, like, I don't want to gatekeep anything, like, and that's one of the reasons why I was so in the back of my head, and I hate the word manifest, but trying to manifest like getting this into other means of production so everybody can have it. Like, it's not my intention, and I think when it comes to that, like, it costs what it costs. You work with your vendor, you work with your supplier, and you're kind of at the behest. and then you're at the behest of shipping costs. Like that was what I heard a lot of people getting really upset with was it costs like, why does this like to ship to Australia, which I did, like people are like, that's too expensive. And I go, it is what it is. Like, don't like it's all in there, like clear as crystal, like this is what it's going to cost. And, even when it comes to like, this is gonna like, I'm kind of outing myself here, but for this next deck for the January 29th, I'm not shipping to the EU because it's too expensive because of their new laws that they have in place. So it's a multifaceted thing. And if people, again, it's open market. Like if you want to pay this much or if you want to charge this much, that's your prerogative. That's your right. And I agree with you, Tara. If you want to light it on fire, light it on fire. Like
Light it on fire.
it's, yeah.
Throw it in the trash.
Or throw it in the trash.
There's literally a deck, which is a hell of a lot cheaper than some of the out of print decks that I bought, that is literally the same price as the deck. And I'm like,
yeah,
I'm not buying it. Because in my brain, I can't pay the same amount for shipping for this deck, which is cheaper than out of print. And I really like the deck, but for some reason in my mind, I'm like, I just can't. I just can't.
Yeah. I paid quite a bit for the yoke, and that came through Instagram. A follower of mine was selling her decks to pay for medical bills, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's exactly. I fell in love. Oh yes, it's perfection. Like to me, like from a design aspect, like I found out that the creator lives in like Michigan or like Indiana or somewhere. I thought she was like in Japan, kind of this like hotshot artist. At any rate, I digress. But I said to her, I was like, I know, and she's reached out about the haptic, and I'm like, I told her all I have are my reserves, but if you're selling this deck, I'm willing to let go of one of my reserve haptic pairs from my own personal archive and pay you, to ship this thing again, all the way from Australia. And we shipped and I paid, and, it was a lot of money, because I couldn't get one of the originals. And at the end of the day, I'm like, it's my money. Like it was my birthday gift to myself. I've wanted this deck since I missed the Kickstarter and all of the other kind of details. But I'm like, yeah, I will pay a couple $100 to get this thing into my possession. And I think, Benny, that's why I said it's like my collection is complete. I was like, I've never spent that much on a deck, but I'm very happy to have it. I'm like, it's the pinnacle. It doesn't sit in the drawer with the others. It's on our shelf, displayed, because I love with it. And
I am so happy I got in my collection. I paid money. I didn't think I would pay that much money for. And this is another one that I got a backup deck.
But Benny, you're not supposed to do that. Why are you doing that again? Yeah.
Well, someone sold me one for the original price. So I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is real. It was real. Oh. And then the woman that created it, or the man that created it, they did a short drop. They were doing drops randomly, and I just went on there, and there was there.
I missed them all.
Yeah. So
I missed them all, and everyone was like, a lot of because I see there's this a couple of my followers that or people that I follow, they'll be using it or a deck that I love, and I'm like, where did you find it? How did you get it? And they're like, oh, just put it out into the world. You'll make one of the drops. And I go, that is not useful. That is not helpful. is there another way that I can not continually check my phone?
I am a bulldog when it comes to trying to find a deck that I want. The hardest deck that I had to find was the, this one took me the longest one to get, is the Savvy Soul Tarot.
Savvy Soul?
Oh my God, it's amazing. Fairlight Tarot, she's horrible because she's had me buy some decks I normally wouldn't. I just really, really love this deck. But I was every couple of times a week, I was posting on the trade Facebook pages. I was on Etsy. I was everywhere. And finally, somebody had it, and it cost $20 more than it originally was selling for. And so happy, But I really believe if you're a bulldog, it will come. Doesn't mean necessarily you can afford it, but it will.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love my out of print decks. I just love them. And to be honest, part of the thrill is like it's an out of print deck, and I got it. So
Yeah.
that is part of the thrill for me.
A lot of times I feel so bad because I won't even know. I'll like show something on my channel and they're like, "Oh, it's out of print." I'm like, "Oh, my bad." Like I don't listen. I'm just like I just float in the breeze half the time.
Yeah.
I think for people that come in now, like for me, compared to people who've been here for years, is all of a sudden you see all these decks that you really love, but they're out of print. Like the Baba Studio decks, like the Alice deck, that's been out of print forever, but it's beautiful. And so you're kind of stuck, and it doesn't come up very often to sell. So that has been a challenge for me, is falling in love with decks that just they're just not around anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, we got 2 questions and we're done, unless somebody else has a question. What keeps you inspired to continue your tarot practice?
I was thinking like,
it's not hard. Sorry. Go ahead, Tara.
I was just gonna say, like, I just love the act of it. I think like a lot of people on YouTube keep me inspired too, in all the different ways that we learn how to use it, or maybe they show a deck that we have that we've forgotten about, and they start talking about, like Dani, when you were going through your agonizing over decks over the last few days, and I was like, oh, like you were, I forget which one it was, but there was a couple you were talking about. I have that, and I've kind of been neglecting it or whatever. And then just the fact of how much it helps me, because I don't have any ability to read predictively or anything like that, and I don't think it'd be good for me too, because I think I would just have so much more stress in my life. But what it does for me, from like a personal reflection perspective, definitely is comforting, and it's just fun, because even though I use it in a more personal development psychological way, I would not believe anyone that said they don't feel a little bit magical when they pull out a
Yes. And I love that you said it's fun, because it is fun.
Yeah.
I can't tell you I say this all the time. They're like little museums of artwork. I just love, sometimes I'll just come in here, I'm going to grab something, and I look at one of the decks on the shelf, and I'll just be like, pretty. And it's mine.
And it's out of print, and it was
and it cost a lot of money.
So much money.
I think like what you said, they're like little museums, and even if I'm not active in my practice, I always feel pulled to my decks. Pulled to the art. This is one of my very favorite decks in the world.
Oh.
And the artwork just makes me so happy.
It is beautiful.
And sometimes I'll pull out a deck and I'm not necessarily pulling cards to do reading or anything like that. I just want to connect to the deck, connect to the art, connect to the energy bit. So, sorry, I was taking it way too soon for you, Nick. But
do you know this deck, Nick?
Say again.
No.
Which deck is that?
This is
Tarot
of Echoes.
Oh yeah, I recognized it, but I couldn't remember the name. Okay.
Yeah, what's really interesting about that deck is that the creator didn't make a book for it, but she did a video on YouTube discussing each and every card. So you get a much more in-depth understanding of the cards.
That's awesome.
I'm
For me,
excited.
when it comes to, sorry, at least I cut you off.
I was just going to say I'm excited about the fact that it is coming out mass market.
Oh,
And
I
then
heard that.
coming out with a guidebook, which will be fantastic for the people who have missed out on it.
I think since I've been cards have been in my life for so long, it almost feels like the inspiration never leaves, I think, for tarot. It's kind of the other things that surround it, like content creation, making video, making photos, kind of writing reviews, kind of those things are the parts that can get a little bit just and I've had to do a lot of reflection on my Instagram account, things like that, and be like, well, how, like I love taking photos. Like that is my like kind of like modus operandi for this whole endeavor. Because again, like we're all saying, they're little museums, and for me to take pictures or to style them in a certain way together, I think that's where a lot of inspiration comes, because that's the fun part to me. It's just like but it's the constantness that I think can get overwhelming. And especially, I found, I'm going to do a little plug here for the Rebus magazine, which is done by my friend Hannah, which is a tarot magazine, which is, it's people she takes, I think we're going to be on issue number 4. She just announced it's going to be, she always picks the card and it's the archetype of whatever that, and everyone writes either fiction or produces art or makes, writes stories and things like that. And so it's an anthology of like creativity. And so that's been recently kind of a new ignition for me, because while I don't contribute to the magazine, I've taken on designing it. And it's been kind of, again, all of those beautiful things that I like of like graphic design and photography and publication, and putting them all together and kind of binding it up and sending it out into the world. The issue this year, she's done Wheel of Fortune was the first one. Then she did The Chariot. We just released The Star this past year. And then this year will be The Devil. So I'm really excited to see kind of like, and it's collaborative, I think, also in tarot, to watch kind of what you were saying, Tara, like inspiration from other content creators. Like we inspire each other. And for me, that's one of the ways that I keep going to be excited by it. Like it's less about the cards and more about everything else that surrounds it, that can be a little bit kind of draining from time to time. But again, we inspire each other, which is great.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sometimes it's the content creation around it where I'm just like, I don't know what else to say. I just want to play with my cards, right? Like that's a real big thing for me, and what keeps me motivated recently is just like finding new ways to play, because like I can get very serious about stuff, like because they have like a spiritual aspect for me, and they have like I can get way too serious, in other words. And like I sometimes I just have to not reinvent the wheel, but like really get myself out of these ruts by just really playing and finding new ways to practice with my cards, and new ways to utilize them and to think of them in different ways. And like, so I'll use, I love finding books, and I have one that I love so much. Look, I have it right here, that I use all the time. The Tarot Activity book.
Oh, yeah.
It's like my favorite thing ever, because like when I feel like I'm in a rut and I'm like, I just want to play with my cards, I just want to find something to do. Like it's so, like I might not do the exact thing that's on there, but it sparks me. And so I'm a very visual person as well. I love taking pictures. I love making artwork around, my tarot. I love expressing it in different ways. I'll write, I'll paint, I'll collage, I'll take pictures, like I like finding the creativity that goes along with my practice. And that's really what keeps me motivated, along with watching others and what are they doing? What unique things do I see, that people are trying, and just like trying something new and getting outside the box, instead of just like, well, I'm going to pull a card and it's going to be this, or I'm going to read for my clients and that's going to be that. And it's like, I want to expand on that. I want to play with that, because it brings me so much joy. It is so much fun. And I'm an art lover at heart. I love beautiful things. I love pairing them and finding the similarities and setting them all up and taking my pictures, and like it's all a process to me. And I find that's what really keeps me motivated, is just finding another way to express myself in that moment with these cards.
There's a book that came out this year, Tarot for Creativity as well, by Chelsea Pippin, I think, or Chelsea. Yeah. I just finished it, and you don't have to read it, in its entirety, but I think it's very similar to the book you just showed, Dani. It's very digestible, biteable, and she gives you prompts and spreads, and it's a very kind of like interesting book, because she'll allow you to kind of like, again, tarot grants you the permission to do kind of whatever you want. Like, and so I think sometimes that it's like going to shop for cereal, like at the grocery store. It's like, I feel so overwhelmed by everything I could do with it, or what I could buy. but like and I think this book is probably very similar, gives you bite-sized snackable things that you can do to find different ways in, and it activates a different part of your mind. Because I think for so often, like tarot can become really serious. And for me, like levity still has to be a part of it because, you'll get bogged down. So if you can find ways to kind of like, not only break out of your ruts, but also like look at it in a different way, I think that book like was very successful. And again, if you pull a card and just read the chapter, like again, there's a randomness to it that I think is very, very freeing. So
that's how I
really
do
great book.
my studies now. Yeah, I'll like pull a random card. I'm like, this is what I'm doing today.
What are we learning? Yes.
What are we learning? And I'll just go and grab all kinds of stuff. I like to play. I like to keep it fun.
I don't have a lot of fun. When I'm reading, it's so most of my readings, it's a spiritual practice for me.
Yes.
It didn't become that, but it's all of a sudden for me. And, spirituality is very important to me. It keeps me grounded. It keeps me full. It keeps me from feeling overwhelmed. It keeps me from, it gives me guidance for my day. And so because I practice that every day, it's like water. It's something that nourishes me. The fun for me is, going through the books, researching the deck, playing with the cards. That's the fun part for me. Talking to people about it, doing my YouTube channel. That's the fun part. I love doing my YouTube channel. I've really enjoyed, and I've grown a lot on the. I look at my old videos and I'm like, ugh. And so it's gotten better. But
if you're not looking back and like saying like or cringing or not feeling good about like what you made, then that means you're growing. So like I think that's a good sign. Like you're supposed. It's like when we look back at like our old high school photos and it's like, oh crap, I look awful. But I look great now.
You should see me weird. I have a horrible perm. Oh my god. I don't know what I was thinking. But so it's just like a daily practice for me. And then I will also use them when I'm facing a dilemma and I need some insight or some, not necessarily guidance, but some ideas on what I could possibly do. Like having a really big, important meeting with somebody at the office and I'm nervous about it. Okay, let's see what message I get that could help me. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes it's a really good reading that really touches me. I'll take a picture of it and I'll make it my screenshot on my phone. So every time I hit it, it reminds me throughout the day, about the spread that I had.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So I think we're at the last question, official question.
Is this your favorite?
I like this question. Yeah, I think it's a great question. Who would you love to do a reading for? And I'm just going to add past, present, anybody.
Oh my gosh.
Someone popped into my mind and my dad's alive. I was going to say mine's my dad, but I want everybody to be like, oh, But my dad is not into any of this kind of stuff. But he has these moments where he'll say something and I'm like, oh, like you are very intuitive. And it still takes me off guard. But it's very intuitive. Like he'll say like, I really have this very strong feeling about this thing. And then it'll happen. And it's been so specific so many times, but he'll never acknowledge it or like, he loves sports and he's a man's man kind of guy. And I just, as soon as you asked that, I was like, I think that would be really fascinating because he often very much surprises me with how sometimes this stuff that I don't think he would ever consciously pursue kind of comes naturally to him. But I don't know. I would feel very dumb going up to him and being like, way down. Like, do you want to do this? And we have an amazing relationship, but like it's just but I think he would surprise me. So I don't know, maybe I will one.
Very cool.
You totally should.
Yeah.
Video.
I think my husband and I were talking about this like earlier today, and I think my answer has changed. I think like you can always like read for like it's like watching Tyler Henry or like watching somebody with a celebrity, which can get kind of like, I mean, it's still fun at the end of the day, but I would want to read for someone that could challenge the way that I read. So like, for instance, like if given the opportunity to read for Arthur Waite or for Pamela Colvin Smith, like in the past, be like, like, what would they say? Like, it's like kind of like, what are the things that would like kill a Victorian child if you told them existed today? And like to see kind of like how my reading style or what I would say to people who developed, kind of what we know to like, not all of tarot, but like what we know today, or read for one of the families who created one of these like decks in the 1450s in Milan. Like, what would they say? Like, what would be surprising to them? Like, it's like, because they didn't use them back then to do that, to tell fortunes or to divine anything. And so to read for them and watch their minds kind of be like, girl, what are you doing? We use these for gambling. Like, why are you telling me that like I'm a jilted lover or whatever? But to read for somebody that I think so far removed from, I think, how we use it today versus what was used in 1909 or like in the turn of the century, I think would be kind of like probably scary, like terrifying, but also like, again, like fun to watch kind of their response and to be like, to read for Arthur Waite and like kind of lay down like a single card and be like, oh, it's like, blah, 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 blah. And he'd be like, that's not what I meant. Like, or like see kind of like what they said. Like it's like people who use the Bible for nefarious like characters. It's like, girl, Jesus wouldn't say that. Or like kind of taking things out of context and kind of aligning them. I think it would be hilarious. It'd be kind of a fool's errand, but it would also be kind of like entertaining again at the end of the day.
Wouldn't it be cool too? Because he would be like, you guys are using this? Like, you guys are still like,
you guys doing it?
Like if you were from Pamela, I thought that was like ingenious. I'm like, oh, that would be so cool.
Oh my god!
And she herself was a storyteller, like, and to see kind of her face light up would be kind of, or completely, it'd be like, I don't know, like this is weird.
Yeah,
great answer.
I think. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead, Dani.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I have like my stuff is kind of pausing, so I didn't know if I was talking over somebody. So I apologize. For me, I feel like more so. I would want to exchange a reading with someone, and that would be my great grandmother.
Oh, yeah, because you have a history of readers in your living.
Yes. My grandfather was a reader who learned from his grandmother. I mean, from his mother, and back and back and back. And for me, I would love, oh my God, to get a reading from one of them, or to give a reading. And to see where things overlap and how they read and what they would do, because it was very it was with playing cards, but from what I'm understanding and from what I've learned, it's kind of Lenormand-esque, because they would take a few out of the deck and they would use certain things. So like just being able to experience that from my lineage and have a reader, because my dad has gotten readings from his grandmother and he would tell me about it. And like, I've never read for my dad yet. He's asked a few times. He's like, we're going to have to do that. And we just never sat down and did it. So I tell you, Tara, do it. Try. It's something that I do want to do, but for me, it would be something like that. I would love to have that experience.
I think that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Lisa?
For me, it would be my husband. He was always so supportive of my spirituality, of my interest in all kinds of things witchy. He was fascinated by it. But because he was disabled and quite unwell for years, and I cared for him full time. And because of that, a lot of my interests like that, I kind of put to the side. And I think he would be so proud.
Oh, definitely.
And yeah, I would love to read for him.
Very nice. Well, I don't want to read for any of my family or anything. And
Same.
I have two people that came to mind very quickly, and for very different reasons. One is because it would be very fun and exciting to do, and the other one, it would be an honor to be able to do. So the first person is Dolly Parton.
Oh my God.
She has been a staple in my life since I was about 8 years old. When I was starting to realize I was gay, her music really comforted me. I would literally be at 1, 2 in the morning in the dark in the living room with my radio really slow, waiting for Dolly Parton to come on the radio. And she has the same kind of eyes that my mom does. So when I look at her, she just feels very, I don't know, comforting. And she creates a space that is so safe. And so I think if I did a reading for her, she just would laugh and cackle, but would be very respectful. And, it would just be a lot of fun. The other one, she's no longer with us, but she is in my lifetime the most spiritual human being that ever touched my heart, and that's Mother Teresa. I would love to do a reading for Mother Teresa. I think that would be such an illuminating experience for me to be able to do that. I just absolutely love this woman. I grew up Catholic. I'm sorry, but I don't trust the Pope with God. I don't trust all these Christian leaders with God. But Mother Teresa, I absolutely trust her with God. Absolutely, 100%.
I mean, if I had to pick a celebrity, I would say Elvis, just so I could meet him. But
yeah.
Yeah.
He probably write a song about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be awesome.
Well,
for me, it would be this guy right here, King Henry. Listen,
King Henry,
worth the possible beheading.
Oh, why him, Dani?
I find him fascinating. Just as a whole, I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I just find him absolutely fascinating. And I think it would be really fun. I think I would be a part of the entertainment of the day, and I would be so down for that.
Yeah. You probably wear the little hat with the 3 little things that come.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here I come.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the last question. Does anybody have any questions that came up that they want to ask the group?
I think I'm good.
All right.
Yeah, not off the top of my head.
This was a really great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
This was so much fun.
Yeah, I'll be doing these from time to time with all the people that I do that come on my channel. Okay, well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed this conversation a lot. I hope you do too. And until next time, my name is Benny, and I'm the Fool's Apprentice. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.